Okay, everybody, Meteorologist David Paul with you here in the KHOU 11 Weather Center. This is in Houston, Texas, and this is your Atlantic Tropical Update for Tuesday. It's October the 19th. Things have quieted down significantly across the Atlantic Basin. That is good. We'll check it out. I'll show you what is going on out there. But of much more impact is what's about to come into the Pacific Northwest coast off the Pacific Ocean. An intense Pacific storm system is about to bring very heavy rain, wind, and very heavy snow to the higher elevations, even the middle elevations of the Mountain West United States. In fact, all the way down into Central California, even into parts of Nevada and Colorado are going to be impacted by this big Pacific storm that's rolling in. It's going to be a multi-day event, and we'll go over that as we move along. First of all, the Atlantic tropics have really quieted down, and this is good to see. So far this season, we've had 20 named storms up to Victor. We've not had Wanda yet. What have we had? 7 hurricanes, 4 majors, which if you look at a normal season is above normal, especially on storm count. We've had 20 storms. We've had 7 hurricanes, so that matches an entire season. We've had 4 majors ahead for an average season being the number of storms and majors and hurricanes over the last 30 years. That's how far we look back on that. So we're above average. We've still got a chunk of the season to go, but we are in full wind down mode in the Atlantic Basin. So where are we statistically? There's the peak back on September 10th. Here's the second peak in October around, the 14th or 15th, 16th. And now we are right here on the white line, the 19th into the 20th. And you can see the slope at this point is really trailing down quickly. So over time, statistically, this is the time of year when the storm probability really begins to drop off as we head toward the end of hurricane season, November the 30th. So hopefully we're done with these, although a couple of things. First of all, if we're going to get a storm, it's most likely in the Western Atlantic, off the Bahamas, Cuba, Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico. That's for a couple of reasons. The water's warmer here this time of year. As we wind down, it begins to cool off in the open Atlantic. And number 2, we start getting these cold fronts push off the east coast. Cold fronts, surface fronts, they are basically areas of low pressure, broad low pressure troughs, and sometimes you'll get a cutoff low somewhere on an old front over the open water, and you can get a tropical system spinning up. So that's why climatology favors development in the Western Atlantic and the Caribbean and the Gulf in October. So what's going on out here? So sea surface temperatures are still very warm. Look at the Caribbean. I just picked a couple of spots here. 88 degrees Eastern Carib, 88 Central Carib, 88 Western Carib. I mean, it's almost 90 degrees surface temperature out here. Gulf of Mexico is plenty warm for tropical development, 85, 87, 88. Threshold's about 80 degrees for tropical development, so we're well in there. It's plenty of energy out there. What about the open Atlantic? Well, it's still plenty warm. Central Atlantic, 84 degrees. Eastern, 83. Off the west coast of Africa, 87 degrees. Further south, 87 degree sea surface temperatures here. You know, even near the Bahamas, we've got 87 degree water temperature. Same store with the U.S. Virgin Islands, and it cools off across the North Atlantic. So there's plenty of warm water, plenty of energy. But there's so much more that goes into tropical development than just warm water. That's just like the baseline. What is happening right now is that the tropical waves that have been coming off of Africa are just much weaker now. First of all, Caribbean, Gulf, we've got scattered showers, Western Caribbean, but nothing organized, no tropical wave there, nothing about to develop into a tropical system, which is good because if we get development here, quite often it gets yanked to the north, which means the United States, but nothing's developing there. I mentioned the tropical waves. This time of year, the waves that come off of Africa, they just get weaker and weaker and weaker as their storm system, coming off the Mediterranean through North and West Africa begins to settle down. We just don't get the big, powerful tropical waves that come off during the summer months and quite often become tropical storms and hurricanes. So there is a wave, there is a tropical wave here. Well, it's a wave over the Western Africa. It will exit, but no models pick up on it. And so for the moment, there's just nothing out here that's developing at all. We've got one little wave here, very weak wave. You see scattered showers along the trough axis there, but the tropics are quiet. Great. Don't let your guard down. We still have the basic ingredient, that warm water, especially Caribbean and the Gulf, and we're not done with hurricane season just yet. Okay, what's going to happen across North America over the next week is fascinating. Huge storm system going to impact so many people, especially out west, but eventually across the middle part of the U.S. later next week. We'll go over the long range here as we move along. This is what's happening this evening. It is Tuesday, and we've got this little area of low pressure, and there's a little trough here, and we've got scattered snow showers across the higher elevations of Colorado and Wyoming. The trajectory of that low is going to be to the east-northeast, up toward the Great Lakes as we head into the end of the week, Thursday, Friday. It will bring rain to Minneapolis, Chicago, St. Louis, Toronto, Detroit. But this is a relatively weak system. And this frontal boundary is not going to push much further south than this. Maybe Dallas gets some rain, but I don't think you're going to get into any colder or cooler air. There's no cold air with this. It's a Pacific system. But as we head into the weekend, Friday, there's the low toward Quebec, a little snow north of Quebec, but the front just stops heading south. So Dallas, a little bit of rain. DC, New York, maybe some sprinkles on Friday. That front's going to do nothing from here except back up to the north. And look at the onshore flow. So for Texas, Oklahoma, into Kansas, even into southern Nebraska, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, the south central U.S., that's a warm return to summer-like conditions flow going into the weekend. Okay, let's back it up. So here we are back on Tuesday. Here's the same system we were just looking at with a little bit of snow in Wyoming and Colorado. But this is the upper level wind flow. These are the winds at 34,000 feet. So now we're looking at the same system, but just the upper levels, which really end up telling the whole story. So you can see how this little system is weak. There's a little trough, but it's not very largely amplified like a vigorous system would be. That system we looked at, that's the one that's going to go into the Great Lakes over the next couple of days, into the week, into the weekend. But what we're going to begin to pay attention to is what's going on out over the Pacific. This is a jet streak, and this is a powerful jet streak. It's a core of very strong winds, the core strong winds embedded within the jet stream up at 34,000 feet. And that core of winds, these little yellow pockets in here, those are winds that will be sustained at times at 130 to 150 miles an hour, west to east through that jet streak. Just to set your bearings, here's Siberia, Russia, Kamchatka Peninsula. Jet streak begins off Kamchatka, comes across the Aleutians, and again, this is way up at 34,000 feet. So why is that so important? Why would we track a jet streak way out over the Pacific Ocean? It is because you can think of this as a river of air. And when you get a streak like that, quite often downstream from that jet streak, you'll get a buckle or a trough or a ridge in the jet stream. But when it's that strong, sometimes unusual things happen. And that is what is about to happen, or in the process of happening, off the Pacific Northwest. This is going into Thursday. And look at how by Thursday, the upper level winds off the west coast of the U.S. and Canada not only have buckled, but are curlicuing back around on themselves. So that is a negatively tilted trough and becoming a cutoff low, and a powerful one. So this is Thursday. And again, this is what's happening at the upper levels. But when you get a cutoff low like that, that's curling back on itself, quite often you'll end up with a surface low pressure underneath it. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And this is going to encourage a very intense area of surface low pressure to form off the Pacific coast of the U.S. and Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. This is going into Wednesday of this week. That's our surface low. Very intense. How intense? Pressures will drop into the 950 millibar range. So when you get a Cat 2 hurricane, you're talking about millibars in the 975 to 965, down to 960 or so. Major hurricane Cat 3, you're talking winds that get down, 955 to 945 millibars. So this is going to be in the pressure range of a Category 3 hurricane. It is not a tropical system. It's in the northern Pacific, so it's a cold core low. But if this were in the tropics, this would be labeled as a Cat 3 hurricane. That's what you're looking at off the west coast of the U.S. and Canada going into the middle and end of this week. equivalent to a major hurricane. And there will be winds with this up to 111 miles an hour or above near the center of that low. Tremendous amount of wave action, to say the least. And so this is how this is going to play out. This is going to push a storm, several rounds of rain, into the Pacific Northwest. So here's Friday, and that's the first round of heavy rain and snow coming into the Pac Northwest. And what we're getting here is what is commonly referred to as the fire hose effect, the Pacific fire hose, that jet streak just roaring in off the Pacific Ocean and pushing wave after wave of heavy rain and heavy snow into the mountains. That's Friday. We get another push of storminess coming in Saturday, Sunday. That's round 2, heavy snow. Going to Monday, another push of heavy rain, wind, and snow. And this goes deeper into the interior mountains of the western U.S. And what's interesting is that that trough, eventually, the long-range models now are suggesting that it is going to evolve into a deeper trough. And going into the middle of next week, this is Wednesday the 27th, so this is 8 days out. Long-range forecast, things can change in that time frame, but this is what's being suggested, that we're going to get a significant trough, and that'll be the next real strong frontal boundary that pushes across the middle part of the country. Now, it remains to be seen if this trough is able to grab any significant cold air out of Canada. Right now, there's not a whole lot of cold air up here. It's chilly, but it's not bitter cold. I think overall, when I look at this, this is a Pacific system more than a Canadian system. Really, the energy and most of the air with this, the cold air, is coming out of the Pacific, but it will have some cooler air with it. And if this does verify in the middle of next week, this type of trough, a couple of things. You'd get some cooler air coming in across a big part of the country, and then you'd get a lot of lift ahead of it. That could be a significant, rain, thunderstorm, maybe a severe weather outbreak, especially Missouri into Illinois, up across the Great Lakes going into the middle part of next week. So just something to keep in mind. Very active weather pattern lies ahead of us with that jet streak and the Pacific storm system going into the end of the week and the weekend. We're moving into fall. We're moving deep into fall. This is the battle of the seasons. You've got summer trying to hold on. We'll have 90s in Houston over the weekend. You've got winter trying to move in with our trough and our Pacific storm system. Those two battling seasons collide, and you get these violent, very amplified weather patterns this time of the year. So it's time to see stuff like this. So that would be going into the 27th, Wednesday of next week. Long range is looking very, very interesting. Okay, what about rain with this system? Well, first, across the U.S., this is the next 5 days. This is that weaker system, that first system that's in Colorado now, coming up across the upper Midwest. Rain totals maybe 1.5 to 2 to 3 inches, St. Louis, Chicago, Minneapolis. Nothing too terribly significant with that system going in across the upper Midwest and the upper plains. Out west, it's a different story. Again, this is liquid. This is the liquid part. Easily 5 to 7 inches plus. Emphasis on the plus for northern central California. And computer models are notorious for underestimating the amount of liquid precipitation that these systems can bring in. So this may, emphasis on the plus. It could be 10 inches of rain in places. Northern California, coast of Washington and Oregon, Seattle to Portland to Medford. Significant rain. That would be snow, of course, across the higher elevations going into Boise up toward McCall. Salt Lake City, get ready, rain and heavy snow in the mountains near Park City. Vancouver, the British Columbia coast just is going to get dumped on with that heavy rain, with that fire hose coming off the Pacific Ocean. Snowfall is going to be equally, if not more, significant. So in these pink and especially this orange area, red area, the brighter red in the mountains near Redding, 40 inches of snow is forecast. That's how much moisture is coming off this Pacific storm system. In the pink, 10 to 15, Mammoth to Lake Tahoe. And then easily a foot possible in all of that blue area. Sierra Nevadas are going to get dumped on. Mountains east of Boise could easily see 15 inches in the higher elevations or more. And again, the models tend to underdo the snowfall with the high moisture content coming off the Pacific. This is Aspen, Denver, Steamboat, dumped on 15 inches of snow for Steamboat. If you got a Thanksgiving ski trip, you may be in luck. Aspen getting a foot of snow. Mountains over toward east of Salt Lake City into Park City, 15 inches plus easily, probably more like plus. And then up to Vancouver, British Columbia, the mountains inland, 8 to 15 inches easily. Banff is going to get dumped on. This is important because, as you may remember, the drought has been terrible out west. This is what encouraged so much of that wildfire to get out of control this past summer with all the smoke. So we're still in significant to exceptional drought in so much of the mountain west and the west coast. But this storm is going to put a significant dent in the drought conditions out west and even into the mountains of Utah, and hopefully help Lake Mead and Lake Powell to get some water in those and raise those lake levels, and put some snow, put some moisture in the bank. All the snow that sits on those mountains is water in the bank that in this next coming spring can melt off and run off into Lake Mead and Lake Powell, and hopefully help the folks who live out west get a little bit more water. That's where we stand on this Tuesday evening. Tropics are quiet, tremendously busy across the Pacific and North America and Canada. Questions, comments, hit me up on social, leave them below. I read them. We'll see you next time with another update.